military leave. Mr. Gunn is absent, and Mr. Gilbert is absent. We do have a quorum present. A notice of this meeting was posted prior, last week at all the public locations. We do have Chief Parsons with us from Lead and Alex Smith with us, along with Adam Stevens from Stream South. Have a motion to approve the current agenda.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that brings us down to business, the property purchase discussion update.
Adam and I met with Jordan.
Yes, Jordan.
I get as far as it's a J and then I mess his name up. Jordan from JTM. I've led our case as to poor pitiful us and what we needed, and he was agreeable to the price of $189. Just a reminder, his original was $210. I came back with $175, and we ended up at $189. So, and that does include them remaining as is, with the exception of getting their grounding caught back up to what we need for our Motorola standards. They're willing to take care of grounding their stuff to the correct standard for 10 years. And then at the end of that 10 years, we'll renegotiate, if they still have a need, what the lease going forward would be.
You will have that in writing. Does that
Yes.
include here also?
It does.
Yes.
It was this tower, and I've also asked them as part of this lease to improve their grounding to R56 standard at their cost.
At all locations.
At all locations.
Where is that in the contract, Dr. Brown?
It's not.
It's not, but it'll get there.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Oh, okay.
Alex and I did this in rush. Can we say rush?
Yeah.
Yesterday. So this is just a draft.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I was aware of a couple things yesterday when we started putting this together, and I just literally forgot it, because it was done in a rush. Mr. Chairman, can I?
Sure, absolutely. You have the floor.
I thought about some of these about 2 o'clock this morning. I left off the 10-year lease aspect, and I've got to add a contingency for approval by the commission. And then I'm gonna put some language in there about us being able to do some due diligence for site inspections. We want to see copies of all of their existing lease agreements on all the towers. But the main thing is, and what delayed me yesterday, is Neil provided me with the tax notices for the 3 tower sites that we're buying. So I went and got the deeds for those 3 tower sites. And because otherwise I'd still be over there looking, because it's not assessed in JTM yet. Head sold it to JTM in 20, and they should have picked it up by now, but it's still assessed under Blunt Broadband.
Actually, technically in 3 different names.
Yeah, Jerry Head.
Each one's named differently.
So anyway, but Neil gave me a starting point, so I went and got the deeds. And also they recorded the agreement, which I don't really know why, but they did it between Blunt Broadband and JTM. As I know Ken knows, I didn't know at the time, that this transfer or sale involved multiple sites, not just the ones that we're buying from JTM. And the overall, the agreement was drafted by, it appears to me, by JTM Broadband's lawyer. And it's very well done. It's a Tennessee law firm. But, and it spells out a lot of the things that went on between Blunt Broadband and JTM that don't apply to us. But then when it closed it out, Jerry Head did his own deed work. And I told Neil yesterday, all three of the deeds for the tower sites we're buying, are worthless. They were done on quitclaim deed forms, which, you know, is not, I mean, we can still get insured title over a quitclaim, but it just kind of raises red flags to a title lawyer when you see a quitclaim deed in the chain of title. But then, it's just pitiful. Why in the world, somebody, I don't know, from the JTM standpoint, I can't believe their lawyer didn't catch all this, but, anyway, Head prepared them. He had, all three of the deeds are signed by not only Head and his wife, but by somebody from Broadband. You know, a grantee doesn't normally sign a deed. The deeds are on, the notary, the only signature that's notarized is his, Head's, Jerry Head's. His wife's is not notarized, and she's on the title for all three tracts of property. So I just hit a wall. Neil and I talked, and that's not our problem. That's JTM's problem.
That's what I was fixing to ask.
But it's gonna be a
Delay.
potential delay.
We couldn't get a clear deal.
So I called Neil to see whether we even wanted to get into this deal until this is fixed. We decided to go ahead with the contract, and so that led to me being a little pushed for time to rub something together. And this let JTM fix it. Apparently, a potential problem to that is that there's not a very good relationship, according to Neil, between the Heads and JTM. And so, as Ken pointed out, you know, this could result in some delay. So what I roughed in yesterday was just something for the board to take a look at with the purchase price. I would hold the earnest money in my trust account, just as a kind of little sense of security. Of course, it's only put $1,000, but, and then let them work on clearing the title. It'd be their responsibility, and that would be normal under the way we do things here in Alabama. The seller normally provides the owner, the purchaser, with an owner's title insurance policy, and they pay the cost of the deed transfer, preparing the deeds. And then I've got in here that we split the closing, and then I started going into some contingencies for us doing our due diligence, but it's not as detailed as it needs to be. So with that caveat, and I think before we leave today, if the board would go ahead and authorize Neil to sign the contract, deposit the earnest money, and then let me finish cleaning up the contract before we submit it to JTM. But I had a lot of questions about some things we've already talked about. One of the legal descriptions had a less than accept for that water tower thing, which I didn't understand, because it talked about you can't have a commercial use and all that stuff. Now I understand after talking to Ken. And,
If that needs to be changed, at least it can be.
now I understand it fine. So anyway, it was not what I expected yesterday. It was about a $600,000 deal between Broadband and JTM and Bluff Broadband. And this is just part of it, but
In interest from what Lee said, we assume to do something on this effect. Is there a way that we can go ahead and do a lease for us to have access and do things, or would this not be a good idea? In other words, lease that site free of charge, in a trade or something for what we're talking about this year, for it to be a year. So of course, only disadvantage that if we've done a bunch of work and this never went culminated, then we're out a bunch of money.
My thought that is, if we got the contract and the earnest money in, that that may suffice as the lease for the,
It could be.
for the month that we're gonna need.
I could put in the contract that we'd have the right of access to all sites, and, under the, I've come up with some language that says, under the expectation that the contract's gonna go through and the closing gonna take place, you know, we have the right to make improvements to the site.
I would feel
Not
better
getting-
about that.
History has stated from the point that we say go to a vendor, it's still gonna take them 6 or 8 weeks to get it done.
Oh, they'll be lucky,
So-
but it, to me, from what he's talking about there, this is gonna be a legal nightmare from their point to get us title, and we don't want it without title.
I pushed the closing out, to the end of July in this agreement here. I originally thought this might be something we could do within 30 days, remember we talked about that? But I pushed it to 60 days. Now, Neil and I had a conversation yesterday about whether the deed work was so sketchy that we might actually end up dealing with head costs, but I don't think so. I mean, it's clear the intent was,
To
yeah, for them to
convey the
buy.
property.
Right, and push comes to shove, head's gonna have to sign corrective documents. Now, the timing of it,
Well, I still have a good relationship with Jerry. I talked to him quite a bit, so I mean, I don't think it'd be an issue,
okay,
him coming in if he needed to.
okay. It's just, I've met Jerry, I was just really surprised with the good work that was done by, on JTM's lawyers on the agreement to buy all these sites, and then the quitclaim deeds being done by head. I would not have allowed that, you know.
I just don't, you know, I'm in agreement, but I think we need to look long and hard if we decide to do anything.
That was
We
kinda
don't
where I
need to
was trying
spend no money doing nothing until we know for sure, because that's just pouring down the drain.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
mean,
saying
I've-
that,
yeah.
I'm not saying that we give them the green light to actually physically do it, but once we get this document done, that gives us the ability to get in there and develop the scope of work and get everything, get the ball rolling,
At the very least, you could,
and have all that prep time.
Well, for instance, we could get the ground testing
that's
done,
exactly what I was thinking.
which needs to be done.
We would have access, we'd be able to get a scope of work and the grounding done on these towers, and that puts us that much we're talking 2 months down the road. Hopefully that would be cleaned
So
up.
those two things are happening simultaneously.
But
You're
I'm
right.
really, truly looking at Pine Mountain.
Is there any
That
way
tower's
to-
not any good for any of the new stuff.
No.
So there's no use putting money
No.
out for a ground study on it.
No.
It's just a waste of money.
On this contract, we're gonna be signing, and we're looking at, we're under time constraints. Is there any way within this contract to put a penalty clause in there at a certain period of time, if all the paperwork's not done, the price starts coming down incrementally till the thing is done?
Is that such a thing?
Yeah, I could put it in there.
I would think that could be a deal,
I don't wanna
Yeah.
deter them.
Yeah, I'm afraid they would,
yeah.
That could
they
be
would
a
balk at something like that,
What
but
word I'm looking for, deal what?
I was gonna say that might be a deal breaker.
That's the word I'm looking for, break.
Well, I mean,
Thank you.
because it'd be a deal breaker for us if they can't get it done.
Well, we still
Yeah.
go back to the ability to lease the property. My question is, where, if we sign this lease and we're operating under that lease, we don't have to have the county commission's approval to operate and do the things that we do. We do have to have it, get it on the board and get approved for the purchase. So we're still looking at getting on their agenda and doing that time frame and getting that pushed through.
correct.
So, I mean,
Which site, is it County 11, the one that we would be
Is-
doing the most work?
County
That's
11
right.
is the first need.
yeah.
We don't have to lay hands on the other two currently, other than just some general
Right,
brush
look at
maintenance
it,
at
there was-
Bluntsville.
There was one deed that was more passable than the other two. And it might very well be the, County 11 site. I'll go back and dig through there. There's one of them probably get a big title on, maybe.
It would have probably been that site, cause as old as that one is, and it's laid out, the former owners, I mean, they would have had
Yeah,
descriptions.
you only had, you had AT&T, you had another owner, and then you had Jerry. And then JTM. So that, you ain't got near as many owners to go through, because it was AT&T tower, and they, because I tried to buy it way back there, and they put them all up for auction all over the state.
There's no way that.
Then they took them
JTN
off the thing.
Title work on this, got, so they must not, let me look at that agreement. They must not have got the title work done on it.
They probably didn't. Because when it was AT&T's, you can bet it was right.
Yeah.
From there, it's been through, let's say, 1, 2, 3 owners.
You would almost be able to see leaves from
Yeah.
that tower site right there.
Yeah, that's really an incredible view up there.
You can sit there probably and watch
We
the
don't
thunder
get coverage
on the
on
mountain.
County 5 and
No.
but nothing.
On the wrong side of the hill.
But, let me suggest this though, from that location right there, and the view that we're looking at now is predominantly 3/4 of Coleman County. So if we were to partner with Coleman County and they place a tower in the Arkadelphia area of Coleman County, that's gonna light up all of our.
That's not, that's in the potentials, but it's a long way off.
Right, yeah, I'm not saying short term, I'm just
Again,
saying,
I go back to what I said a week or two ago, I don't think we should look at this on partnering with anybody. We gotta look, we're doing this for Blount County's coverage. If it falls over and something else comes in, that's fine.
well,
our
I'm just
best
looking,
bet
I'm just
is-
looking for opportunities to try to enhance the west side of
Who
the county.
took them big microwaves off of that though?
I don't know, but I wouldn't have done it.
I mean, there's no question
been
that
up
this
there
is
for
gonna
years.
help Blount County as a whole,
Oh, yes.
by all means.
Yeah.
It's got 60, 70 years. Back when the microwave first came out.
Yeah.
So-
Basically, this contract that we are, will be authorizing him to sign will have the grounding requirements added, the 10-year lease, question answered, copy of all present leases on the tower, and title clearance.
Inside inspections, yeah.
Sorry, inspection, I got it.
And if it's not done by the date you've got here, what happens?
Well, you can, obviously can extend it
Can I see that?
as long as
Thank you.
there's a contingency in here, as long as, when they're doing the title work, as long as they're working on clearing it, then we can extend the closing date. Or I can change the closing date, I can put it out.
I don't think we'll put it out further. I think the further you put it out, the possibility of them dragging feet more.
I agree.
And I think that they're really wanting to get out from under some of this loss down here. That's the reason, a little bit of a animosity in the areas. I think they want to get out from under this losses. So I think the date you got, you said July 31st, I didn't hear
Yeah,
something
we
like,
closed on it before then.
I can't see these things.
July 33,
All
yeah,
right,
under
we-
4, yeah.
Can I make a motion that we allow Neil to sign this based on the changes we've discussed? And I would like, after it's done, to see a copy of the sign.
I'll email a final once we get there.
So Ken has a motion to purchase.
I second that motion.
Any other discussion? Call for a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that is on contingency of the county commission, correct?
Right, I'm gonna add that in there too. As an aside, Neil sent me a draft or one he picked up from another district, similar resolution, and I'm gonna tweak it, and we'll have that for submission to the county commission.
That's a copy that's in here.
Right, it is, yeah. It's just one little thing I had that I want to clean up there.
All right,
Yeah, Mr. Moore sent me that, it was another county resolution, and I basically just did a find and replace of that county name and took out the verbiage in that one where they were authorizing a loan I took that verbiage out because we're doing it with cash on hand currently, so.
Now, the next item is the R56 grounding update. I know we touched a little bit in this conversation with that. So basically, those requirements are gonna fall on a contingency of the purchase of the property.
Correct. Also, just to throw out there, we didn't mention it, but the backside of your agenda is the quote from the insurance company of the difference that those 4 sites is gonna make is, in the grand scheme of things, I think that's a very reasonable number of $4,000 to insure those 3 properties. I was afraid that was going to be a big burden, but it's apparently not. As far as the grounding stuff, we talked about what needs to be done and whether or not we could do some of it in-house. And so we've researched that some more. Doing it in-house is still gonna be ridiculously expensive. Just the crimper, to be able to crimp this 2/0 wire that we've got to work with, the crimper alone, the best price we found was $300. So by the time we buy equipment and parts, it may not be that much of a savings. We've reached out to 3 different vendors, trying to get some quotes just for a comparison value, and then we'll get a quote from NCA, of course, since they've done all the rest of our stuff. Just so that we've got apples and oranges of what is the best deal for that. So hopefully by our next regular scheduled board meeting, I will have a quote for us to approve to get the site here at 911 and at Palisades up and to that standard. And then we will figure out what we've got to do with County 11 once we get complete access there. But at least we can be getting these 2 sites done in the meantime.
Now, will this contractor provide the test results on the bond test to the ground?
Well, that's the other question of, do we want to expend the money to do what we think is gonna have to be done anyway?
I don't think we should, that person should be responsible based on what the requirements are that they do. And then when the Allcom, MCA, whoever they are, comes in, they gonna check it anyway. Then if it's not up to those standards, then we got that contractor to go back on to make sure they brought up that
So
standard.
it'll be in the contract that they must pass whatever
Right.
the bond
Yeah,
requirements are.
NCA would have to perform their own tests, and then
Yeah.
obviously if it don't work for them,
Yeah.
Okay, wait, yeah, I was.
Am I,
What, I was thinking 2 different realms there. The other thing that we've got to do at some point is actually do some external building test of the physical grounding system in the ground to make sure that it is capable of passing.
but that should be part of whoever we get to do the testing.
And then what we gonna build, a building inside of the buildings, that would be what would need to be
Well,
tested.
at
The building
11,
itself,
yes.
Yeah.
But at Palisades, Palisades is the one I'm most worried about because the only thing that we know for sure is in the ground at Palisades is the single ground rod off of the meter. There are.
Well, there's one at the tower base and at each Skyward. But the secret of all this is you've gotta have a certain amount of area
Correct.
with copper in the ground, fence is not grounded. All that stuff has to be done and tied together to get you
Your
to
ground-
close to 0 resistance that you can.
And
Evidently, the requirements have changed in the recent past
They
because,
have,
Correct.
not that much.
well, I know that they had to come into our tower there on our property and they dug around every one of the guide wires, put new plates in and did a whole bunch of stuff last year. And that tower hadn't been up about 15 years.
so I have a quote from a company named Ground Links that does enhanced grounding for broadcast facilities. Their original niche is radio stations and TV stations, and he's gotten connected with the 911 world. He's done some big projects already for Mobile 911. They had a tower site that was getting popped 12 or 14 times a year. So he got hooked up with Robert at Mobile County, who's their IT guru, and remediated that, and they haven't had a problem since. So I've got a quote from him that I was thinking of being a capital project for next fiscal year. So if we can get the internal works done this year and get the actual internal R56 stuff up this year, and then get the external caught up next year, if we can work on that in the budget. His
Again, we'll look
cost.
to wrench into it. I understand doing the internal is important, but the internal is not important if the external's not
Correct.
there. It don't look good to do all that stuff if you don't have a good ground feel.
Correct.
That's the key. And if you're gonna do something first, we better do, I think we're gonna have to look at all that as one thing done and get it all done. Contract's gotta explain completely what they gotta be responsible for, ground resistance, and then we do need an external, be it MCA, whoever installs it, which will probably be the best, because they're gonna do it anyway. They are gonna require in their installation that these things be met, or there won't be no warranty. So they're gonna require that, so let them do the testing. Make sure whoever does the grounding, it's in their contract that they guarantee it to meet those standards. And if they don't, they gotta come back and lick the calf over. Because this is not we're talking about millions of dollars of equipment, and it's got to be right.
And we're looking at probably in the ballpark of $26,000 to $28,000 worth of grounding.
Compared to the damages,
Correct.
I don't care if we got insurance, I don't like to call them.
The-
Because
the-
anytime we get hit.
The
by lightning,
downtime
it takes
is
us down.
much more expensive to us than the
Yeah.
repair. So Ground Lakes has got some really unique products that they're using. It's a kind of a woven basket that they drill a hole, drop this basket in, and it's equivalent to like, what do you say, 3,000 ground rods in surface area, something to that effect.
The problem that we're gonna have at Palisades is the oswald.
Well,
That's gonna have to be
his
a
plan is,
radio grounding system. It's gonna be grounding copper laid out, maybe just under the surface.
his plan was to dig as deep as we can, set his baskets, and then backfill on top of them.
Ain't no digging.
So, we would have to, he would be hauling in soil to do that. So it's just a matter of how deep we wanna get in currently.
So where
It
we
all
at?
needs to be done.
We need to get somebody to do it, right?
So it's just a matter
Matter of time.
matter of getting
Get that
quotes.
stuff.
Quotes and approving one and getting it going. Okay.
But now, Ground Links does not do anything internal. That's the one thing
Ground
about
Links
it,
is
they're
all the
strictly
external.
outside. So we would have to hire somebody else to do the internal grounding.
That's why I was thinking if we do it 2 phases and get internal done, that gives him what he needs to tie external, and
See, and I look at right the opposite, myself, just because it's like you
and we could do
buying a
them,
car, but you got no tires.
and we could do them somewhat simultaneously.
I think Neil's
You're
point
right.
is that
I
it may
mean,
be
if you
easier
ain't got the
because
field out there, it ain't gonna
after we
work
put all
out.
the equipment in place, it's gonna be a lot harder to do the grounding then internally than it would be, to do it before it goes in place. I think that would be the deal.
To get the base set and ready, and then all it's gotta be is tied to. So that will all be, hopefully, we'll have some actual quotes and something ready to present.
And I don't care who does it, I just want it done right. But just the thought, have you gotten quotes, are you getting quotes from MCA about the internal? Because they're gonna be the ones installing the equipment. And if I go back to that the same way as the other, it depends on their call, but they can't come back later and say, oh, you didn't do this. Oh, yeah, you didn't do it. And you gotta have the scope of the work, specify that stuff, because I don't think we ever been doing a good enough scope of work to be done to these people that's doing the job.
Ken, Lee sent us two scope of work.
Okay.
Yeah, I requested copies and I hadn't received them.
Oh,
I
really?
emailed it to you, I thought.
I didn't get them.
Oh,
I asked Stan and Lee's report too.
Okay. I'll
Yeah.
send that in a minute. I thought that I forwarded that to you.
Yeah.
I didn't get it.
Yeah, so my goal is to get a couple of quotes and then have something to compare to MCA's quote. The biggest concern with MCA's is
Time.
we approved that grounding work in Sneed to be done at the September board meeting, and it didn't happen until March.
Again, I'm not taking it because I don't know,
So-
but we never had a scope of work. we said do it, I'm assuming. There was never no emails. I
Yes.
checked on their end, quote, with the scope of work, there was no email for the scope of work to be performed.
Well,
There should have been something tied to get it done, I agree.
So what we'll do with this is, let's, in that correspondence, attach that scope of work to it, so everybody knows going forward at the same time, this is what has to be
Yeah.
done, and then we'll just put timelines on that. We can't go backwards, let's move
Yeah.
forward.
I agree.
so, just for cost and for time's sake, I wanted to get a comparison quote, and what was the other tower vendor that you?
Well, it's Tommy Walter
Walter,
Wireless.
that's
He's in here in Alabama, but he is a famous guy nationwide for stuff he does. He teaches R56 classes. So,
So, just give us due diligence of comparison quotes.
All right. Any other comments? Any other discussion? Alex, you have everything you need?
I do. So, what I'm gonna do is, I'll work on it this morning.
Okay.
I'll shoot Bill a draft. If I left something out, I'm sure we'll be able to get it.
And as soon as we get that second draft going over, I will send it out to everybody.
Okay. Having there being no more discussion, entertain a motion.
Make a motion, adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Uh,
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, gentlemen.